The sound of helicopters overhead blends with the rhythmic click of boots on concrete as a convoy crosses into the fenced compound of the Civil Military Coordination Center in Qiryat Gat, southern Israel. Journalists assemble behind a cordon, the afternoon light casting long shadows across the concrete apron. Amid this modern facility, designed for liaison between the Israeli Defense Forces and international partners, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio stands before the press, his tone steady, the significance clear. He opens his remarks by reaffirming Washington's interest in deepening the framework of regional normalization. I think if you look at the Abraham Accords, he says, we would be very open about the fact that we would like to expand and add more countries to that. And we see that this is mutually beneficial. It's not just beneficial for Israel, it's beneficial for these countries. We have a lot of countries that want to join. They have expressed interest in joining and want to join. So I think that would be great. And I think that could be a byproduct of achieving some of this Gaza ceasefire, Ed. Those lines spoken in this venue show a dual-track logic. On one front, the goal is regional normalization, more Arab and Muslim states establishing diplomatic, economic and security ties with Israel. On the other, there is the broader context, a faltering war in Gaza, a fragile ceasefire, international pressure, reconstruction plans, and the long shadow of conflict. Rubio places the accords within that larger architecture, normalization as an incentive or perhaps a reward for durable stability. The scene expands. Around him, Israeli military officials and American diplomats scan displays, maps, and video links. The Coordination Center is a symbol of the US-Israeli security partnership. Rubio turns to his second soundbite. I do think the Abraham Accords can grow. I think there are some countries you could probably add right now if we wanted to, but we want to do a big thing about it, and so we're working on it. But believe me, we have a whole unit at the State Department that works on that. Here, the implication is explicit. US diplomacy is not passive. There is structure and resourcing behind expansion of the Accords. That unit at the State Department exists, the Secretary says, to foster new normalization deals, to shape them, negotiate them, perhaps coordinate them with Israeli and Arab stakeholders alike. The Center for Military Coordination is both a backdrop and a stage, reinforcing the idea that normalization and security are intertwined. To understand the significance, one must rewind a little. The Abraham Accords were first launched in 2020 when the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Morocco normalized ties with Israel. That diplomatic breakthrough under the previous US administration reverberated across the region. Today, the idea of addition becomes the new frontier. Which countries might be next? Iraq, Oman, Saudi. Diplomatic and business officials quietly suggest that open channels exist. The Secretary's words suggest Ankara, Riyadh, or perhaps countries in North Africa or Southeast Asia may be circling. But the path is not frictionless. In the midst of this announcement, other issues loom large. On the Gaza front, the ceasefire remains fragile. The humanitarian situation remains catastrophic. Fragile infrastructure, displaced populations, and ongoing negotiations over the post-war framework continue to dominate UN and diplomatic agendas. The Israeli government, facing domestic political pressures, continues to calculate its next moves. All of this sets the scene for Rubio's visit. It is not just about signing new agreements, but about reshaping a regional settlement across multiple axes: diplomatic, economic, security, and humanitarian. In Qiryat Gat, the Secretary walks through the facility. He is shown meeting with military liaisons, viewing screens showing border de-escalation zones, and reviewing plans for humanitarian access corridors and post-conflict reconstruction. The message is twofold. Washington backs Israel's security concerns, and Washington is ready for the next diplomatic phase. These two messages are entwined in a single trip. Rubio's first soundbite signals the broad ambition: normalization beyond the initial 3 Accords signatories, driven by mutual benefit. His second emphasizes the machinery behind it and the willingness to act now. These remarks carry weight because they suggest a shift from conceptual diplomacy to active expansion. His presence in Israel at the CMCC site underscores that expansion will be grounded in security realities, something Israelis emphasize and regional Arab states watch closely. From the Israeli perspective, this is a moment of opportunity. Having invested heavily in the Abraham Accords, the Israeli leadership sees potential leverage, recognition, tourism, trade, regional transit, defense cooperation and energy deals. If more countries come on board, the strategic horizon broadens. Israel becomes more embedded in the Gulf Arab network, less isolated in the broader Middle East. That provides both economic upside and security resilience. Rubio's remarks effectively validate that Israeli leadership expectation. From the US vantage point, this trip signals that the administration sees Middle East diplomacy as not frozen. Despite decades of stalled peace negotiations, the region retains dynamism. Expanding the Abraham Accord framework offers a way to anchor Israel in a broader regional order, one less dependent solely on bilateral US-Israel guarantees and more built on multilateral ties. At the same time, this shift dovetails into the Gaza theatre. If regional states link normalization with stability in Gaza, then Washington is stitching together leverage. Egypt, Jordan, Saudi, UAE, Israel, the United States, all with a stake. Rubio pauses during the tour, turning to a screen showing a map of southern Gaza and the Kerem Shalom crossing, which remains pivotal for humanitarian corridors. He points out that reconstruction demands are enormous, the rubble mountains in Gaza countless, and the sooner the diplomatic security equation resets, the more the economic rebuilding can begin. Although he does not say so explicitly in the sound bites, the context makes clear. Normalization and reconstruction are two sides of the same coin. Listeners must register what is implied beneath the polished language. We have a lot of countries that want to join, Rubio said. But join what? Join Israel's diplomatic circle, yes, but also join the unfolding architecture of post-war Gaza, of UN-incentivized peace, of US regional frameworks that tie economic opportunity to strategic realignment. Normalization is not simply a signing ceremony. It is a signal of alignment, of shared interest, of regional integration. Later, the Secretary addresses questions from reporters about how the normalization push intersects with the Gaza war and the Israeli-Palestinian track. He again stresses multi-layered strategy. New normalization deals must be rooted in sustainable peace. He warns that annexation of West Bank territory or unilateral Israeli moves contrary to negotiated frameworks could undermine momentum. Israeli government officials listening recognize the subtext. Expanding the accords now demands consistency on other fronts. In effect, Rubio is offering an arc of logic. If Israel secures its borders, participates in a durable Gaza solution and links into wider regional cooperation, then more states will normalize. If additional Arab and Muslim countries join, it reinforces Israel's security and opens new economic and diplomatic pathways. The Secretary's words serve both carrot and blueprint. Thereafter, the voiceover shifts to the human dimension. In Be'er Sheva, nearby Qiryat Gat, residents still carry the memory of rocket sirens and tunnels uncovered. Israeli civilians talk of feeling less isolated, more connected, if the regional normalization dream holds. On the Palestinian side, displaced Gazans, viewing the southern border zones from afar, wonder whether reconstruction aid will truly flow, whether economic corridors will open, whether recognition of Israel by Gulf states will shift matters on the ground. For them, Rubio's remarks may feel distant, but the concrete flows of aid, rubble removal, new trade routes and water pipelines will determine the effectiveness. The Secretary's visit also carries global implications. Chinese and Russian diplomats are watching closely. If the US can drive a new phase of Middle East integration, it may reclaim some strategic foothold. Gulf states previously hedged between Washington and Beijing-Moscow. Now the leverage may tilt. For European capitals, it offers a chance to plug into a stabilizing Middle East with fewer military burdens and more economic partnerships. Rubio's public declarations serve as signals not just to regional capitals, but to major power capitals. As the tour concludes, Rubio returns to the press platform in Qiryat Gat. He reiterates the core message: we do think the Abraham Accords can grow. The language is plain but meaningful. It is not just optimism, it is preparation. A unit at the State Department is already tasked with it. The status quo is shifting. He invites more countries to join, but he also ties that invitation to a broader peace agenda. That linkage is key. In the final analysis, the interplay of diplomacy, security, and economics is being deliberately framed. For Israel, the expansion of the Abraham Accords offers a form of strategic normality. Less isolation, more partnerships. For the US, it offers a pathway out of the traditional mediator role into that of architect of a new regional order. For Arab countries, it presents opportunity, but not without risk. Their publics remain skeptical of Israel, and the Gaza war remains fresh. For Palestinians, the calculus remains uncertain. Will normalization come at their expense, or can it incorporate their rights and reconstruction? Rubio's remarks suggest the latter must be true. Walking away from the CMCC site, the convoy heads back across the high desert scrub toward the junction where Gaza's northern fringe meets Israel's southern perimeter. Journalists unload gear, footage is stored, live wires go to feed studios. The day ends, but the strategy advances. The final word, normalization, is no longer just a diplomatic nicety. It is strategy, anchored in war-to-peace transition, framed by the rubble of Gaza and rooted in the geography of Qiryat Gat. With the invitation extended to a lot of countries that want to join, the next phase begins. The question now is not whether that phase happens, but how fast, how many, and under what conditions.
I think you look at the Abraham Accords, we'll be very open about the fact that we'd like to expand it and add more countries to that. And we see this as mutually beneficial. It's not just beneficial for Israel, it's beneficial for these countries. We have a lot of countries that want to join, that have expressed interest in joining and want to join. So I think that would be great, and I think that could be a byproduct of achieving some of this. I do think the Abraham Accords can grow. I think there's some countries you could probably add right now if we wanted to, but we want to do a big thing about it, and so we're working on it. But believe me, that we have a whole unit at the State Department that works on that.